Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new installment of the NanoEd Quarterly Forum. I see a lot of familiar names and some new names and faces. So welcome if this is your first time. This NanoEd Quarterly Forum is a collaboration between Nano and Stanford, Daniela, Marielle, who could not be here, Marielle Kolkner, who's a physics teacher in New Jersey, and our office, the National Technology Coordination Office. We do this 4 times a year, and I will put in the chat the recordings of past sessions and also our ongoing Google document with the different resources shared by our different presenters, our different teachers. And as a reminder, this is completely teacher-led. Whatever you are interested in learning about, we try to bring speakers in that topic. We've discussed everything from teacher-led, teacher-created lesson plans in nanotechnology. We bring external presenters, different subject matter experts in topics like agriculture, semiconductors, and anything that interface with nanotechnology. And without further ado, let me introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker today is Burton Mahadraja. He is a director of global education initiatives at the SEMI Foundation, and he's also a former school teacher. Without further ado, Burton, you have the floor, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing this time with me. And I know that for the East Coast folks, this is quite late. And thank you to Maria and Daniela too for sharing the space with me and inviting me in. I am sharing my screen. I think folks can see that. So as Maria mentioned, I'm Burton. I work with Semi Foundation, and I'll talk a little bit about my background, who we are, but typically we like to start with a logo quiz, and I won't put anyone in the spot for doing this right now, but this is our typical entry point where we're trying to talk to students about semiconductors. They can't go 5 minutes without touching one, but it's hard to really get them to understand the impact that semiconductors can have on their daily lives. So we typically start with this, where it's a little bit of a fun way to get them going. They obviously have prior knowledge about all of these things. Even Atari, no matter what generation, there's always somebody in the crowd who knows what Atari is. So that's why we start with this piece, and then we try to bring them to, okay, without this, which is the semiconductor industry, chips, none of what they know is possible, right? None of these more relatable brands can exist without this industry. So I know this is more broadly nanotechnology. I'm excited to be talking about semiconductors specifically, and also to see some familiar faces and names in the group who I know a lot more about semiconductors than I do. Um, but that's a little bit about how we try to approach this. Now, who is this person speaking to you? My name is Burton, as we mentioned. I was a teacher, as Maria mentioned. I taught mostly special education in self-contained and resource settings. I did mostly continuation in high school, so students who are on their way out of the education system land typically in my classroom. Um, and yeah, that's what I've done for the first part of my career. Um, Teaching, supporting teachers and being a teacher coach, as well as being an administrator at a school level. So as I continue to move forward in this role and try to think about programs and resources that support teachers, I think of the faces that you see on the screen, right? This is my student Eveline on the bottom right, who she graduated in the year 2020. Couldn't have done it without the work of semiconductors. And then, what's funny is that she had no idea about the work that I do after I left, but this is something that hopefully can open doors for students like her, and that we can give tools to educators like you all to be able to illuminate the path for students like her. So that's the background. What I'll go into today, and then I'll try to be relatively judicious with time and leave some time for discussion or diving in or whatever it is that you all want to do. I'm going to go where the momentum is. I'll talk a little bit about what SEMI is. So where am I coming from? What's our interest in creating these things? What are some of the resources that are readily available? And then what is up next for our work? So what is SEMI? For for some, if not many of you all, this will be really familiar, but there are various industry sectors that we as a trade association and the electronics manufacturing world represent, right? There is the folks who create the electronic systems, and a lot of these are going to be the consumer-facing brands that students will be more aware of. Amazon's on there, the car companies, Apple, etc. And then there are folks who manufacture devices and semiconductors who then supply those devices into the electronic systems, folks who build the equipment for those semiconductor manufacturers, folks who supply materials, subcomponents, et cetera, to those equipment manufacturers, or the fabs themselves, and then the folks who are in EDA, electronic design automation, providing the architecture for all this work to happen and to continue to move forward in the design space. So that is the breadth of who we represent. This is by no means a comprehensive list of our member companies. We are a trade association with over 3,100 member companies. So we'll have the behemoths like Intel, TSMC, Western Digital, Applied Materials, but we also have tons. You don't get to 3,100 without tons of small and medium-sized folks. So that's who we represent as well across these different sectors. So what we tell students, and this slide with the concentric circles is available in the resources that I'll show. What we tell students is for one consumer product like the iPhone, which they are all familiar with, they may source chips from this many companies, who source their equipment from this many companies, source materials and subcomponents from this many, and you utilize design from this many different companies. So we try to show them that there is a deep network behind those consumer-facing brands that they know, and that every single one of these companies is going to have a career opportunity should they be interested in pursuing it, right? So it's an invisible job market that they may not be aware of, and that we really try to illuminate for the students and the educators that we work with. So I'll pause here and also say that when I show this to technical folks, they tell me how wrong this slide is because they say there's not nearly enough circles in here to show how many companies are involved in the creation of something like an iPhone. So just saying that this is something to illustrate the breadth of the industry, but not necessarily a particularly comprehensive view of what this can look like. So SEMI is an industry association, like I said. What do we do? There's a lot of work that we do in the standard side. So you'll see here on the left the standards for wafer sizes where they where they create chips, and how SEMI is an industry association that standardizes those things so our companies can really work on innovating on the things that matter, not necessarily innovating on the sizes of the wafers that they receive, including something like the 450 millimeter wafers, which no longer is a thing. So that's what SEMI does. A lot of standard building. We have technology communities so that we can work with companies on a pre-competitive basis. And I work on the workforce side. So we have an arm of this industry association that does just workforce development. So we try to partner with educators across K-12, across post-secondary, lots of community colleges and university relationships. We try to build up industry recognized certificates so that industry can really do a better job of telling educators and training providers, hey, here are the skills that we really want you to focus on that are really important to be able to access these jobs. So here is just some of the programs and the reach that we have. And that's the bias that we're coming in with, is we want to lift this workforce development for this industry, especially at a time when all across the world, we're seeing government entities invest in this industry because of geopolitical tensions, considerations around strengthening supply chains within certain regions. The Chips and Science Act, as most of you are aware, especially in the United States, impacting what we do here and the growth of this industry. So that's where we're coming from, is how do we lift initiatives that help this industry as a whole and is easier for us to do together than for single companies to do alone. And all of these programs we build with in collaboration with our member companies. So I'll pause there. That's background on me, who I am, what SEMI is, what we do. I'll just pause to see if there's any points of clarification I can help. make prior to moving into the resources themselves. Any curiosities, questions from the void? Going once, going twice. We'll move forward. And this is some of the stuff that we're trying to do is we talked about the iPhone being very accessible to students. How do we make this really visible for them that there is this company that they have never heard of that is one of the more important companies in the world that creates the SoC for the iPhone or for something like their Nest thermostat. How many companies like are listed on the right that are involved in creating that one product? So what does that mean for job opportunities for them, as many regions across the world are trying to strengthen this supply chain within their own backyards. And it starts with awareness, right? When they see Silicon Valley and they think about software companies, and I'm based in the Bay Area, so the students that I used to work with, who, a lot of them, I mentioned I work in continuation schools, a lot of students who are um, not really working out well in the education system. So when they got into the Silicon Valley companies, it is at the ground level as security, for example, at Meta. So what does this mean when we're trying to illuminate a pathway? Hey, if you don't want to go back to school and do college or university, what are pathways for you in advanced manufacturing in semiconductors in the Bay Area? That's a little bit of the work that I do now. It's very California specific, but trying to illuminate for those students, hey, here's the pathway that's available for you to work in the real Silicon Valley, not just the software companies. So here are the different pillars that we are building in order to raise K to 12 awareness for this industry. And I'll say that we are only one player within this landscape. We are trying to connect with as many different entities as possible to make sure that we do this work together. So Daniela is here, representing Nano at Stanford, but also the work that the broader National Nanotechnology Coordinated Infrastructure does. And they have lots of K-12 resources that they make available. And then they do initiatives like this alongside the NNCO. So we are not far from the only folks who are doing this work, and we want to collaborate as much as possible. So uh, appreciation for the folks in the call who I recognize who we've already worked together with, but also open call to collaborate with anybody else if you are interested. So we have a pillar of our work in industry image and awareness. I've talked about this a lot already in the past, 10 or so minutes, where it's really about making students aware that this is an industry that exists, and then what pathways are available for them, no matter what they're interested in, right? Because if they tell me they're interested in art, they're interested in music, there's a path for you in this industry. Every single one of these companies are going to need marketing, PR, anything like that, and just being aware that these companies exist is one of the major barriers that we see for not only our member companies but also the job seekers who are looking. We also build different K to 12 resources, teacher-made lesson plans, unit plans that we build in collaboration with a local community college to try to build a pre-apprenticeship pathway to our apprenticeship program. Lots of pieces available there. And then we also have a K to 12 STEM kit program where we work with two providers. One does like a conductive ink pen. The other one is called the microbit. That's this microcontroller that those teachers are holding up. Lots of resources available already, but we just tailor it to have a bend towards what is the industry and how does what they're working on with those STEM kits relate to the semiconductor industry. And then we go to our companies as well as government entities to fund these kits free of charge so that teachers can implement this within their classrooms and engage students in a hands-on way. So I'll go into each of these in depth and provide some links. They're going to be mostly QR, but I'll also go through a site where you can just click on the links all the way at the very end. So for the industry image and awareness campaign, we get companies like the ones that are listed up top together to start working on this piece all together. So on the left, you'll see a career exploration site. So this is a student-facing website that we have where you can take a enter a survey. It's a basic RISEC map to roles within this industry. a skill survey so you can plug in. I was a former line cook at a fast food place. What are transferable skills for me? Here's my MOS if I'm coming from the military. What are transferable skills for me? And then they also have videos. So those folks you see on the bottom left, those are videos of different industry professionals across a variety of our member companies talking about here's my job, here's what I like about it, here's what I do. So we make it a little bit more visible for students. And on the right, you'll see a Road Trip Nation chip in documentary. So this is a PBS documentary series that we were able to work with to make an episode specifically about the semiconductor industry. So these three young folks on top of this big green RV, they drove all around the country, got into clean rooms, saw what work is happening in this industry. They don't know where they're going in their career, and they're just trying to explore, okay, what opportunities does this industry have for folks like me? And that's been available for I think 2 years now at this point. So we're trying to continue to leverage that as well as these semi stories as much as we can. So those are QR codes. Don't worry about taking photos. I'll make sure that if you're interested in the slide deck that we can send it out to you, and also that you have the landing page where you have access to all of this stuff at the end. We also do an initiative called Semi Stories, where we highlight, like I mentioned, a variety of roles from a variety of different companies, people from a variety of backgrounds. So you'll see senior PR manager, not particularly technical. And it's something that is important that students know each of these companies has a PR manager. This is a division within each company that is needed. So even just knowing that, hey, I can look elsewhere to work in tech is really important. On the bottom right, Michael Factor, this facility maintenance technician for Tokyo Electron, was a former is a veteran. So you know, highlighting that there are pathways to go from military service into this industry, whether you're a student or not, is important. And yeah, this number is actually a little bit about out of date. Our partner Tigbee, who works with school districts to disseminate this information, counted about 4.5 million students. So this QR code hit gets you straight at the YouTube playlist. But if you're interested, if you're working for a school district and you're interested in creating an account for your students, they are free through Tigbee. And that's where they capture the millions of views is through that portal that they have. The typical model, it's not specific to this industry, but the typical model is that on Monday, you'll get a new video from a variety of different industries, like I mentioned. And then throughout that week, your students can then submit questions to the professional. And then on Friday, they get to answer those questions. So the professional answers the questions, students get to upvote which ones they want answered, and then get the information straight from that person that they saw the recording from. And then we have lesson plans and unit plans, like I mentioned, created from a variety of different places. A lot of this is through teacher externships that we do with a partner out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So teachers will do like a semiconductor week, essentially, and then one of the outcomes, the deliverables that they have in order to get the full stipend is a lesson plan that they're going to incorporate within their classroom that has to do with the industry that they learned about. So that's where we get a lot of these lesson plans. I think we've done them for I think 4 years at this point, if not 5. So there's a good amount in there from a diverse set of grade levels. So that might be interesting for you to see. That's Ignited Education on the bottom right. And then we also have a set of units from our collaboration with the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. So we work with a local community college to also build these units for K to 12, mostly middle school and high school facing. That can we're working on getting it approved as a pre-apprenticeship in California, but regardless of that approval, could be a good set of lessons to implement should you want your students to be interested in this industry and learn more about it.
And Burton,
And then
there was
we
a question in the chat about is there any connection to getting field trips to facilities through the website?
That's a great question. It depends where you are. So we are, my title says global. I am only one person, but we do have a broader team that does work more on a local or regional level. And we currently have, I can talk about, you'll see this later on, but we currently have boots on the ground, quote unquote, in California, Arizona, Michigan, and Ohio. So if you're residing or teaching in one of those places, there's much more of a likelihood that we'll be able to do something like that. We do that in the Bay Area relatively regularly, but outside of that, it is a bit more difficult just because of that work. Indianapolis. So yes, let's get in touch. I think you'll be able to have access to my email somehow after this. So feel free to reach out to me. Let's get in touch. There is an event happening in April of next year that is open to K to 12, and we want more folks to be able to join. So I'll send you more information about that. Thank you.
We will add that information in the resource package in the Google Doc that I shared. And Burton, I also had a question that someone sent to me. What is Zigbee? The app that you mentioned? Some slides
Yeah.
back, yeah.
If you don't mind me shifting, let me just
Okay.
share my screen, and then I can go to Zigbee. So this is that platform that I mentioned where, students will watch a video at the beginning of the week, and then they can submit questions to the professional throughout that week. So this is, yeah, their business model is to get industry associations or industry like us to create this content. So it's all free for educators. So you can get in contact, you can make an account, and then be able to have your students make accounts so that they can have access to all of these videos on a weekly basis. On our end, what we worked out with them is we want to be able to have the semiconductor specific content available. So we have that available on a YouTube playlist, which I just clicked on. And yeah, these are all the semiconductor specific pieces. You'll see the view counts are low because we're counting all the views in their portal. But that is what Zigbee is. They're our partner to create the content. It's pretty fast paced, which is something that we really like because, as you know, for your students, we need to be quick so we can get their attention. Their main editor, I think, is coming from ESPN, which is why we like going with them.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
I don't know that question. That's surely so I'm sorry. There's a question in the chat. Does anybody know if Zigbee is CIPA, COPPA, FERPA compliant? I would imagine they're FERPA compliant, but I don't know about the other two. So that would be a good question to pose directly to them, as they do have contact us on their site. Thank you for that question. Okay, so we have these resources. I can walk through them later. We do have a K to 12 kit program. This is also very region dependent because it depends on where we have funding, but we really try to make a scalable program that is turnkey for our member companies if they want to support. So we get companies like KLA, providing funding for us to be able to go to their local communities and provide these kits free of charge. That's a model that we've done. Michigan, we have done work with Colorado, California, Arizona. So that's really state dependent as well. So how do I find all this stuff? This is where I will go to the browser and show you where it's at. This will continually be updated with all of the stuff, including what I'm going to talk about later for what's next. So if I'm going to go back to my browser, I mentioned all of these different things. So this is the link that we really want. I'll drop this in the chat. And this has it all. So it has a quick start guide from a colleague of mine who works a lot in Michigan. She's like, well, a lot of the folks that I work with don't really know this context. So where can they learn the context about what the CHIPS Act is, et cetera? They're not opting in already to a national nanotechnology initiative event like you all are. So this has a little bit more. And then you can go down here and see, okay, where is that resource repository? These are those lessons that I mentioned that are teacher created and units that are teacher created. So if we go down here, and it's divided by grade level as well as subject area. So these are the mini units when we talk about introduction to semiconductor processing, front-end manufacturing, components of a cell phone. So if we look at one of these specifically, it'll say, hey, here's the overview of this set of lessons. The alignment to NGSS SAPs, what materials you might need, the essential questions, etc. You've seen unit plans before. That is what's contained within this. We do try to create as much engagement and interactivity as possible. So there's typically a gallery walk or a Socratic seminar embedded within these units. All of this is Creative Commons license, so do with it what you will. If you just want to take bits and pieces, that's great. We just want to be able to kickstart folks in integrating semiconductors into the work that they do and making that as easy as possible. So that's a little bit of what we see here. If you're, a little bit younger facing, it's more limited, but these also exist. Again, something that teachers have built up for integration within their own classroom. So you see a variety of different ways that this is rolled out. This teacher specifically is doing Pear Deck for their lesson. So that's the first link that you'll see for the resource repository. If you have microbits or CircuitScribe, if you're familiar with this and you're like, well, I don't need the funded kits, I just need the resources. We do have this link at the bottom where you can say, okay, I just want microbit. What are the units that you've already done? And then tell me about this unit and what it is. So we just embedded the NGSS links because Microbit is mostly a UK foundation. They do global work as well, but they don't have the bandwidth to be able to add stuff for NGSS. We do a good amount of work in Texas, so we add the TEEX standards as well. And then it has specific industry connections. How do you talk about this unit with students? What should this ignite some curiosity around? So that's available on here as well. And then career site. So this is where, again, you will be able to have your students create an account if you'd like, so they can save their survey results, be able to add, okay, I'm gonna start my inner survey, or I want to say, okay, let's assess my skills, and then, what did you work at? I said, the piece I said was a line cook. So let's see if they have anything like that. They might, or fast food. And then it'll give you, potential transferable skills. So that's what this site does. It also has about halfway down these different stories from individuals within this industry. So you can access these here as well as through the playlist that Daniela dropped in the chat. The Chip-In documentary from Road Trip Nation is also available here. The trailer is a really great introduction to what this industry is. So if you want to share that with students, it's a good quick hit, 2 minutes to talk about what semiconductors or microelectronics are. But if you have time for more, you can do more. And then we also have a viewer's guide. If you need a subplan, there is a subplan here for you if you want. So a viewer's guide for the documentary where it says, okay, here's where you pause. Here are guided questions and discussions for you to guide your students through for these different folks that you're watching. So that's the documentary. This is the link for the YouTube playlist. That's on there as well. And then other resources that are really great. Some of this may be really familiar already. Some of this is stuff that I need to continue to update because there are more resources like this. So this one is transitioning from microscope to an SEM, zooming into a chip. This may be familiar to other folks. The stuff that I have yet to add is things like the Micron Educator Hub. They just released this in an event with us, I think a couple of months back at this point, but they do have K-12 lesson plans, but we don't link out to that yet because I have not been good about adding links. So that's that's another one that you may want to bookmark as Micron Educator Hub, but that's what's listed on this resources for educators page. Thank you for adding that, Daniela. In the chat, that's what's listed on here. This will continue to be updated. We are working on a couple of other initiatives to bolster our work here. So I can talk a little bit about upcoming work, ask for input, and then pause for questions as well. So I mentioned that we have local teams in a couple of states, right? California, Arizona, Michigan, Ohio. We have some other folks elsewhere, but that's where we do good amount of the work. So if you want to partner with us there in some way, feel free to send me a message. I'll try to direct you to the right folks. There's also work ongoing outside of SEMI, right? I mean, the microelectronics commons hubs, that's got really lots of tendrils everywhere. Local universities, community colleges that are doing good work in this. Um, Upcoming as well is there's lots of NN acronyms, but National Network for Microelectronics Education. This is an NSF and Commerce opportunity that came out, oh, I think at the beginning of October, potentially. Anyway, so they're going to fund somebody to figure out, okay, how do we do microelectronics education at the K-12 and post-secondary level in a nationally coordinated way? How does that work? I hope that work integrates with what's already happening with NNCI and NNCO. And there's also this TT Chips Challenge coming out of the Department of Education. So lots of ongoing work that, with Semi Foundation and without Semi Foundation, that is really great to connect on semiconductors. We are building new assets for industry awareness. They're not complete yet. We're looking to build more, so it will be updated on that page that I sent. And we're also building on industry recognized certificates, right? So I know some folks on this call are representing community colleges or universities. We are working on gathering industry to say, here are the skills that we really want so that your programs can align to these industry recognized certificates and address those basic skills to make your students more employable in the job market. So that's another piece of upcoming work for us as well. I'll stop here, partially because I'm thirsty, because also I may have said too much. I'll ask for input if there are no questions, but I'll also open it up for questions if you have them.
Hi, this is Tanaka speaking. I have a question. I'm with the Minority Engineering Program of Indianapolis, and I've been like scouting around looking for uh, field trip ideas. So I know you mentioned all the areas that you guys are based, but we would be willing to like cover transport and go to different states if that meant we could um go to like maybe one of the facilities like Intel or I don't know whoever else is on there to like do a tour of a facility. Would something like that be would we be able to facilitate that?
Yeah, so I don't know where in Indiana you are, and my knowledge of US geography is unfortunately lacking. Um, but this is the event that I wanted to put on your radar. Um, this is going to be in Indianapolis, not necessarily hosted at like a member company, right? And then the challenge with the Midwest is that the big player moving in is Intel, and it's going to take some time before their fab's online. And they also, the accompanying ecosystem that will come in with them is also taking some time to come online. So I don't know really great off the top of my head, like, hey, here are some good member companies for you to potentially reach out to. But I'm happy to connect outside of that. But this is the lower hanging fruit for me. This is going to be one of the things that we do. Let me just step back. One of the things that we do is a big expo show, typically in San Francisco, but now it's going to move to Arizona, to Phoenix, where we have hundreds and hundreds of industry members and companies exhibiting at Semicon West. And what I do is I bring students here. So K to 12, community college, universities, because yes, it's important for them to see it's going to be important for them to see where those folks work in the actual manufacturing facilities, but it's also important for them to see these types of spaces. So this is more what this semi expo in the Heartland will replicate, is an expo show that where we will get companies, they can get those connections. There is a workforce development component within this show, so you can learn about more about that here. Thank you again, Daniela, for dropping the link in the chat. But for the more individual connections, feel free to connect with me offline, and then we'll see what we can. No promises, but we'll see what we can get done for you.
Okay, and thank you. That was very helpful. And I know there are other colleges, representatives from other colleges on this call. I asked this to them. Do you guys have any opportunities for what I'm talking about?
Actually, Tanaka, I was about to unmute and let you know, I'll drop my email and you shoot me an email. I'm terrible with geography outside of California. So I'm part of something called the National Nano Coordinated Infrastructure, which covers 16 universities across the country. And I'm an education and outreach program manager. So what you're asking for, there's a version of me at these other universities, and that would be who I would connect you with. That could, because all these universities have nanofab facilities. So it might be a good entry point for you to learn about them and then follow up with, like, for example, the event that Burton was talking about. So I'll drop my email. Feel free to reach out. We can talk further on a separate email chain.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you both, Tanaka and Daniela. Any other questions from folks that we can dive into?
I have a question. In Southern California, I don't think there are enough, let's say, training for high school teachers nearby, because if I see programs Stanford has for middle school educators, are there any programs that you can do virtually for teaching nanotech to high schoolers or exposing them to high school curriculums that we can build or do, uh, or some events that we can participate?
Absolutely. Danielle, I'm gonna step back and let you jump into the nanosoups.
Yeah. So in Southern California, UCLA, their California Nanosystems Institute has a teacher education program, which actually is the reason I'm here today, which is specifically for high school. It's not a virtual program, but it is phenomenal, amazing, fantastic. I cannot give it enough praise. It has literally changed my life when I was an educator. And today, so I can drop information about that in there. And there's also Pasadena City College. So Burton mentioned that there's a lot going on at the community college level, and they actually have something called MTech, which I think is a really good resource. And actually, we had them on in a previous version of this, which is another resource. That's what's crazy about this. This is like this great community. There's so many resources, and we want to get them all to you. Yeah, Burton just threw it in there. But Pasadena City College also has an online class that anyone can take, including high schoolers, to learn about nanoscience, which is clearly very connected to semiconductors. So I can also put information about that in the chat.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
I think it would also be useful to maybe connect her with UC San Diego. I don't know where in Southern California you are, but they also have an NCI site that has RET programs for teachers.
I would love to have information about them too. Also, is there do we have some initiative? Because since Maria is here, this question is for Maria. Maria, do we have some initiative like nationwide that we celebrate Nanotechnology Day or something where all K to 12 can participate in small activities, like just to bring out awareness among high schooler among school students that there is this career that is gonna be thriving, because we are passing that age about coding. Now we are into this age of building and quantum computing where we need people. So do we have this initiative? And if we do, how can I be a part of it?
I love that you asked that question. Yes. So there's the National Technology Day is October 9 for 10 to the minus 9. if you know your units. Very fun day. There's activities that are community led across the country. There's some initiatives that my office organizes. For example, this year, we paired teachers with nanoscientists that could visit virtually to their classroom, and the nanoscientists could talk about what it means to be a nanoscientist, what's a day in their life, that type of activity. We also do that for Women History Month if you're interested, and you also don't have to wait for Nano Day for that to happen. You can reach out to us, and we can always connect you with a nanoscientist that can virtually visit your office. There was also an art competition that we co-organized with the American Chemical Society. There's things that people like little kits and demos that we have shared in the different resource packages that I just put on the chat that you can do with your classroom. Honestly, it's community led, so whatever you're interested can be done. And there's lots of local universities that will have events for Nano Day. For example, I know Stanford had like a open house day for people from the community to go see their facilities, and lots of universities do something similar.
Just to
Thank you so
piggyback
much.
on that, yeah, I know Cornell had a huge thing. I know Northwestern. So this is where that network that Burton mentioned, like SEMI is a great resource. Like I love the resources on the SEMI. As a former teacher, I highly recommend them. They're visually appealing. They have everything you need standards wise, and they're, I think, really developed with the current focus of students in mind, right? These short clips, they're not sending you links to 25-minute YouTube videos, which is not going to work for today's generation of student. They make, like, those videos make great warm-ups, right? We know we have warm-ups in classrooms, and it answers that age-old question of why do I need to learn this? So I think that there's a lot of value in the SEMI resources. So as a former educator, I highly, highly recommend them. And we use some of them incorporated into our middle school teacher professional development program. The question about can students participate in, a little more hands-on with nano, and I don't think we really haven't made a big deal about this just yet, but actually Nano at Stanford and ASU and San Diego are running our first annual community nano image contest, where we invite anyone in really the world to participate in microscopy. And you can actually access remotely through a program called the RAIN program, to where you can actually have students use a scanning electron microscope remotely. And then you could capture these images and submit it to our nano community image contest. So I just put the link in the chat to our website that has information about that community image contest, as well as microscopy resources if you're wondering how do you introduce this to students. If you're at the university and you have access specifically to a physical instrument, there's a guide on that as well. But I think it's just another tool that you can bring for students that might be interested, or if you run a club or an enrichment and you want to find some additional things, because I know as educators, you're already jam-packed, right, with content that you have to teach. So we don't want to, say that we want to add more, but we just want to help you make your content more efficient and also provide options for students who may want to go that extra mile, or maybe you work with an organization that can do that. So.
And I would like to just highlight that the RAIN network that Daniela just mentioned is free for educators. So let's say you're a high school or middle school teacher, you're like, where am I going to get an SEM? You just plug into this network. We actually had 2 sessions dedicated on how it works. It's literally a Zoom like this one, and that the students are able to zoom in, zoom out, and control the SEM. There's more information in the Google package, and I hope here someone already put the RAIN network. Burton did. Awesome. It's there.
Other questions for folks?
Okay, so I was driving, so I did not ask this question, and I'm sorry if I'm taking out anybody's time. So you mentioned that if they go in nanotechnology, they might be making the chip and everything. But when this question comes in, majority of our chips are getting made in China, Taiwan, and maybe in India from now onwards, or in a couple of years. Are we making chip in US?
Yes, so
Are we
you
making more
see
facilities in US that I can say to my students that yes, we are, and it's going to be a good option for our students?
Yeah, you see the vigorous nods from Daniela. There is a good amount of growth happening in the US. So there's lots of hot spots. I think the regions where we, as the Semi Foundation, do a good amount of work on the workforce development side is Pacific Northwest, including Idaho and Boise, with Micron's giant growth there. The Bay Area in California, some in SoCal, Phoenix, Texas, Northeast. Midwest, there's a good amount of growth everywhere. And like I showed at the beginning with the depth of this industry, yes, this growth is in those big names that are making chips, Intel, TSMC, etc. But it's also in the ecosystem that feeds into those device makers. So thank you, Jennifer, for adding some information regarding the growth that's happening in New York, right? So I think if I can add, let me see if I can find this quickly enough. Semiconductor map. So the Chips and Science Act awards. Here we go. A varying amount of funds for infrastructure investments. Let me pull this link up on my screen. So you'll see whether they received CHIPS awards or not, the investments by these different companies and what is expected coming out of that. So if we zoom into where I am now in the Bay Area, you'll see that within the Bay Area, there's a hotbed of activity, right, happening in response to the Chips and Science Act. You'll also see what activities are existing facilities versus new projects versus expansion. So that's a fun map to play with if you're interested in learning more. But definitely lots of growth happening in response to the Chips and Science Act. It's a piece of legislation that definitely at the time was bipartisan. Rare bipartisan bill in our time. Lots of tailwind from what came out, the chip shortage coming out of COVID. Whether or not it addresses it, another question. But lots of tailwind from that. Geopolitical concerns for chips because of the impacts on national defense. So yeah, it's going to continue to grow.
Thank you.
There's also resources that I feel we've shared in the past that shows the different career paths that students can have in the semiconductor industry. And I think Burton did a great job talking about but career paths out of technical colleges and community colleges. But depending on your student population, there's really strong career paths at different levels: community college, straight out of undergrad, master's, and graduate school. And I think that's something that's important to discuss as well, that students don't need a PhD in electrical engineering to get into these jobs.
There are community colleges in SoCal also that are going into nanotech. Daniela, can you share that list if you have some? Because then I would like to share that with my students, because I am based in SoCal in LA. I'm part of LAUSD. So it would be wonderful for my students to know, and then they can, because majority of them do go to community colleges, and then they can still be part of STEM and work through some exciting work. Okay, Pasadena Community College. Okay. I really want to find somebody in Pasadena Community College now. Okay.
Yeah, if you again, I'll put my email here in the chat, and you can. I've been around this area for a while, so I know a lot of people in a lot of different places. So I'm very familiar with Jared at the community college level, who's a great contact. He runs the center that you have the link in. So happy to connect you with him. He's always looking to help students move along. I think that's the best part about this forum, is you're just going to meet a ton of people with a ton of resources and connect you to where you need to go to help your students be aware of what's available. And the community colleges are really valuable. We have a community college intern program who we keep getting requests from our smaller companies to ask if any of our interns are interested in full or part-time jobs, because that experience that they're gaining is really valuable. And these are community college students who don't have a 4-year degree yet, but they're getting job offers right now, just based on their experience. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for all levels. I think there's some crazy statistic that Maria was talking about. It's like 26,000 technicians, right? Not people with 4-year degrees are going to be needed, over the next 7 years, for all these, openings of manufacturing places that Burton mentioned. So it answers again that age-old question of why? Why do I need to learn this? Well, so you have opportunity and options.
Thank you.
Yeah, I dropped the link to Pasadena's laser tech program, but I'll also add to this that just to draw a picture a little bit. Unfortunately, I don't have a visual for this, but for the growth in the US, for example, from these manufacturing facility and infrastructure investments in semiconductors, I it's gonna be at least half and half skewed to like folks who are technician level roles or operators. So these are folks coming out of 2-year programs, maybe not even 2-year programs, who are doing the work of, let's say, the actual interfacing with the machine in a semiconductor manufacturing facility, the assembling and operation of certain machines within that manufacturing facility, the maintenance of that equipment. And then you have the other half of that 4-year workforce, right, who are doing more of the design, potentially the engineering in collaboration with that technician workforce. So there's definitely growth in both ends. The part where we've really, as this industry offshored in the past, the part that really needs to grow back is that technician workforce. So that's what a lot of the scrambling is, and resources are being invested in this industry right now, is to revitalize those programs. So that's why a part of my work I mentioned at the beginning very briefly is working with a local community college out here to lift up a registered apprenticeship program, right? We have the first registered apprenticeship program in semiconductors in California, and then to shorten the timeline to getting these courses approved, our partners actually had to go into I don't know where they store their old syllabuses, but that to get hard copies of syllabuses from the 90s and the aughts, so that we didn't have to go through the full curriculum approval process, so we can just update those courses. So there's definitely a lot of energy behind in the community college space behind this industry.
Thank you. I'm gonna look into it, and I'm gonna share that with my students so that they can benefit from this.
Wonderful. Any other questions or feedback? Because I know Burton also asked for feedback of what is needed.
What I heard is needed and would be useful. Number one is those site visit opportunities. I know it's a big problem to tackle, but I hear that loud and clear. The other one is can we be a little bit more clear about the opportunities that are available for students, right? So that the career type attempts to address that, but we know that there needs to be multiple iterations of what that looks like to really find something that's going to resonate with your students. But I'm open to hearing anything else that might be useful for you all as you go about your work.
Okay, hearing none. It's clear. We have great resources. We just need more awareness. Any last comments or thoughts before we adjourn for the day? Hearing none, thank you, Burton, again for your time. This was fantastic. The resources you shared are really, really good, and I look forward to hearing how all of you implement them in your classroom. Have a good afternoon or a good night if you're in the East Coast, and hope to see you soon. Our next NanoEd Quarterly Forum will be in January. We'll be sending details soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Maria. Burden. Take care.